Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Monday, the 13th of January, 2020, the 16th of Tevet, 5780. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget, you can get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com, on Facebook, Joshua Hasten, or Josh Hasten, Israel Advocacy and Journalism, on Twitter at Josh Hasten, and on Instagram as well. We're going to go right to the phone right now for a very special guest. She's been a friend for a long time, actually, all the way back from my days at the Jerusalem Post. Ruthie Blum, she is a columnist these days at the Jerusalem Post and also a colleague of mine at JNS News. She joins us now, I believe, from Tel Aviv. Ruthie, are you there?
That's right, Tel Aviv.
Welcome back to the show. It's been a while, Ruthie. How you been?
Yes, it has. Thank you, Josh. I've been fine.
That's good to hear. And I have your column in front of me from this past Friday's Jerusalem Post. This is the featured column, by the way, called Right from Wrong by Ruthie Blum. And the title of this week's column is Israel's Not Going at It Alone After All. So those who thought that, when we're talking about Iran here, of course, those who thought that Israel perhaps would be confronting the mullahs in Tehran on their own, the events of this past week show, which Ruthie discusses in the column, that is not the case. Ruthie, if you can, just give us a synopsis and elaborate on your column here.
Well, about 2 weeks ago, the chief of staff of the IDF, Aviv Kochavi, gave a speech at the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya, in which he said many things. And he said that Israel really has to prepare for Iran, and although Gaza is a problem and all that, Iran is the main problem, and that Israeli citizens should beware that in a confrontation, we'll have to buckle up, basically. And then he expressed concern, or he hinted at a dig at President Trump by saying something like, well, it seems like it's up to us. So I'm just paraphrasing. Something like, it's a shame that we're going to have to be the ones to deal with this. Well, in the meantime, since he made that speech, now he had reason to make that speech. And the one reason was that Trump had announced a withdrawal from troops from Syria, at which point Turkey invaded and started slaughtering the Kurds. And there were other signs. And so he had reason to say that. However, he was wrong. And the last 10 days have shown that he's wrong, since Trump has finally... Oh, the other reason that Kochavi said that was that Iran was attacking American interests in the Gulf, and America didn't react. So the idea was, well, in the end, America's not going to do anything. America doesn't like to go to war and won't send troops on the ground, etc. So since then, Trump attacked Iran, actually, and not just Iranian proxies in Syria, but actually Iranian bases, and mainly the big icing on the cake was Soleimani, the head of the Quds force of the Revolutionary Guards. And he changed the whole map there. So it turns out that we really don't, it's not true that Israel's going it alone.
So you'd have here the U.S. eliminating Soleimani. You also have, following that elimination, Trump giving a speech saying that Iran will never have nuclear weapons, which we've been hearing from our prime minister for a long time now. In addition, You're talking about additional sanctions on the Iranian regime. And while Trump says he's not looking for war, he will not hesitate to use force. Do you think Trump and the way he's handling this entire situation is spot on? I mean, there are some who are saying that the U.S. needs to do more in terms of supporting the protesters in Iran. At this point, do you think the Trump administration is headed in the right direction, or doing exactly what they should be doing in terms of Iran?
So far, this administration is doing more than its predecessors. I have to stress again that any American president who wants to get elected or reelected has to be very careful about going to war or talking about sending troops. Americans always, listen, this was true in World War II. How long did it take America to enter World War II? Even the most just wars. Americans have this thing, they constantly say, the body bags, soldiers returning in body bags. Americans don't like to go to war. Even extremely pro-Israel Americans. There is a streak of isolationism in America that comes from an aversion to war. But having said that, Trump, who is, his base is exactly that type of person. Therefore, Trump was being careful about the troops in the Middle East. And yet, he still said, no, we're not going to put up with this. And if we have to, we're going to attack. So he attacked from the air. Okay, he didn't send troops to do that, although he did send more troops to the Middle East, by the way. And he didn't really withdraw troops from Syria, not many. So he's playing a delicate game. He has to balance the need to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons and satisfying the American public that elected him and that is likely to re-elect him. As I said, I think he's doing this very brilliantly. As stupid as people say Trump is, and as ignorant of the ways of the world that is said about him that he is, he's actually handling this better than his predecessors.
At the same time,
and by the way, an important point here is that Trump didn't go to the UN to say, I need help from the UN and I need approval. None of that crap.
Right. At the same time, you say in your column here, of equal, if not greater importance, is the fact that in the 3 years since entrance into the Oval Office, Trump and his team have never questioned IDF actions in Gaza or Syria. Regardless of the operation, whether overt or covert, the White House and State Department repeatedly have reaffirmed Israel's moral right and duty to defend itself against the pernicious forces bent on its annihilation. And this, of course, is a major change, and as you say, is equally important, especially for us here in Israel.
It's crucial because during the 8 years of the Obama administration, Israel kept having its hands tied, or attempts were made to tie its hands. And the Trump administration is doing the absolute opposite. See, there's a difference between Americans might think that it's not their job to, as they say, police the rest of the world. But they have no problem, the pro-Israel America, and the majority of Americans are pro-Israel. Most of those don't have a problem with Israel doing it. You understand? It's not that they're war averse to other countries defending their borders. So I don't see a contradiction, really. And the best part about it is that it's true that Trump, there's no question that Trump is in coordination with Israel from an intelligence point of view. Trump ripped up the Iran deal after Prime Minister Netanyahu showed him the trove of documents that the Mossad retrieved from a warehouse in Iran.
Right. And
within 2 weeks or something, really, really shortly thereafter, Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as we head to the 2020 election, everything right now has been pointing in Israel's favor in terms of the U.S. administration's policy. I mean, you can't even compare what we're going through now from where we were 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm just thinking out loud here of the building freeze in Judea and Samaria, which Obama pressured our prime minister to implement back in 2010, which of course did not lead towards any sort of peace. Do you have any more information in terms of the rumors of the Trump deal of the century? If it is in fact going to come out before the election, is there anything else that's been going on that would lead you to believe that, since your column came out a couple days ago?
Are you talking about before the Israeli election or the American election?
Before the Israeli election.
The Israeli election. I highly doubt it. And even if it did, that deal, whatever it is, won't work. And that doesn't mean that the United States doesn't have to constantly craft such deals. It won't work for the simple reason that there is no deal that the Palestinians will sign with Israel. And even if they sign a piece of paper, they won't abide by it. So, and it doesn't really matter what's in that deal, because any deal presupposes that both sides are aiming at the same thing and just don't agree on how to get there. In this case, Israel and the Palestinians do not agree on the end game, on the ultimate goal. The Palestinians' ultimate goal is the destruction of the state of Israel. It isn't to live side by side with Israel. And therefore, there is no deal that can work.
I agree with
what could work, as we're seeing in Iran, I mean, hopefully in Iran, there's movement to overthrow the regime. That doesn't mean that's happening tomorrow, okay, because protesters are getting gunned down in the streets, of course, again. But it means that there's movement in that direction. And at some time in the future, when the Palestinians decide to overthrow their leaders, then there would be a chance for some kind of deal.
Ruthie Blum, we are running out of time, but for those of you out there, check out her weekly columns in the Jerusalem Post. Israel's not going at it alone. After all, that's her latest in the Jerusalem Post. And also on JNS. Of course, I'm partisan towards JNS, so keep up the good work you're doing. And just one last question here. It's personal, if I can.
Sure.
So when I met you back in, this was ages ago in 2003, this is before we worked together at the other radio station. In 2003, yes. you were the Carrie Bradshaw of Israel, if you remember those days.
Well, I wasn't exactly the Carrie Bradshaw of Israel as much as I'd like to have been.
No, I think you were. That's
I certainly
how people...
didn't have expensive shoes. I was an advice columnist for several years.
Right.
Yes.
My question is, what do you like better, the stuff you're doing now, or when you were writing that column which focused on culture and it was, as I said, very Carrie Bradshaw-esque, if you will?
Yes, well, the culture column, Flipside it was called. Right. I actually loved doing that because I loved describing the real Israel, real Israelis under fire from suicide bombers. Right. Going about their lives in in the normal way. And I did love that. However, it was really more like literature than what I'm doing now. And it's much harder to keep up a weekly, let's say, description and keep the level of the literature as high. So in some ways it posed a problem.
Right. Well, it was enjoyable to read you then. It's enjoyable to read you now. And, of course, it was enjoyable to work with you in radio. And it's great to be a colleague of yours.
Well, the feeling's entirely mutual,
Thank
Josh,
you.
as you know.
Great to be a colleague of yours at jns.org. Go check out all of Ruthie's columns and all the great news that they provide as well. That is it for today. I appreciate it so much. It's great to have you back on the show. Wishing you a great week and keep up the holy work that you're doing. And let's talk again soon.
Thank you. Okay, will do.
All the best. Take care. We're going to take a short break and come right back with everything in the news here in Israel. This is Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten. Short break, and we'll be right back.
Is Star Wars Jewish?
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic.
Tune in to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman to find out the answer as he discusses the release of Star Wars, Rise of the Skywalker, and its connection to Torah.
A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense.
Plus, an interview with Commanding Officer Adam Nahum of the 501st Stormtrooper Israel Outpost Unit.
At the Shabbos table, you do a Dvar Torah. It's nice sometimes to throw out an image here and there because it captures people's imagination, sometimes better, something they can relate to.
That's Inside Israel Today, every Tuesday on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
And we are back. Josh Hasten here. Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com for Monday, the 13th of January, 2020, 16th of Tevet, 5780. The popular game show Jeopardy is in the news. All of a sudden, Jeopardy at the center of the Israeli-Arab conflict, if you want to call it that. I don't know if you saw this clip here, and this was a victory for Israel, if you will. Reported by Israel National News, the popular American game show Jeopardy raised the ire of pro-Palestinian activists after refusing to accept the word Palestine as the location of the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. Contestants were asked, "Where's that church?" in one of the categories on Friday's show. First question in the category was, built in the 300s AD, the Church of the Nativity. First contestant answered, "What is Palestine?" To which host Alec Trebek said, "No, wrong answer." The next guy, Jack McGuire, answered, "What is Israel?" which was the accepted answer.
Church 200. Built in the 300s AD, the Church of the Nativity. Katie.
What is Palestine?
No. Jack? What is Israel? That's it. And that takes you to 2,200. You're still in third place, however.
And this is angering pro-PLO, pro-Palestinian Authority, pro-Arab activists who are upset with the game show because, in their view, the Church of the Nativity is in a fictitious place. Well, not in their view, in my view. They think it's a place called Palestine. Palestine has never existed. It's not a state. And Jeopardy gets it. Alex Trebek gets it. And the producers, whoever else puts together that game show, realize that the Church of the Nativity is in Bethlehem, which is an ancient city in Judea, dating back to biblical times, which is now under the control of the Palestinian Authority since the Oslo Accords. Those disastrous accords were put together. But there is no such thing of as a state of Palestine. So the people at Jeopardy got it right this past Friday night. And it's just interesting to see how that one answer/question on a game show is trending worldwide. I guess, it's really that obsession that people have about Israel. I mean, pro-Israel activists use it for the good, but those who hate Israel threatening and saying all kinds of nasty things about Alex and the game show. Prime Minister Netanyahu, moving on here, the Jerusalem Post reports that Prime Minister Netanyahu says, "I will not let settlements be uprooted in any diplomatic plan." Those are communities in Judea and Samaria. Settlements will not be evacuated, according to Prime Minister Netanyahu. He vowed this past week, amid talk, that the Trump administration may present its plan within the next couple of weeks. He made his remarks at the Kohelet Policy Forum, saying, quote, "I will not let any settlements be uprooted in any diplomatic plan. This idea of ethnic cleansing, it won't happen." His remarks came as diplomatic sources say the Trump administration is strongly considering releasing its plan for peace between Israel and the Arabs in the coming weeks, even before perhaps the March 2nd Knesset election. Netanyahu expounded on the Jewish right to live in Yehuda v'Shomron, Judea and Samaria, pointing to its anchoring in legal documents from San Remo and the League of Nations. He said, quote, "There was no West Bank separate from the rest of the land. It was seen as the heart of the land. We never lost sight of our right to live in Judea and Samaria." He went on to say, "When Israel returned, we didn't return to a foreign land. That is a distortion of history. Jews lived in Jerusalem and Hebron for thousands of years consecutively." That is true, but on the other hand, this is an election season, and the Prime Minister has said many things in the last, I guess this is our third election season, in terms of his willingness to annex Judea and Samaria, starting with the Jordan Valley, and moving on from there. So let's see what happens when push comes to shove. If Netanyahu, in fact, forms the next government, let's see what the policy will be. Naftali Bennett, the defense minister, also spoke at that conference, accusing Netanyahu's government of not doing anything to halt the decade-long battle. The PA has engaged in Area C trying to make that area part of a future state of Palestine. So Naftali Bennett, here we've talked about this issue on the show before. Arabs building illegally under the direction of the PA in Area C, bringing people to live in these illegal villages. Khan al-Amar is the most well-known, whether they're Bedouin or Arabs from other areas, bringing them in, seizing state land, and this is supported by the European Union, funded by the European Union, to try to take over strategic areas within what is known as Area C under Israeli control, both military and municipal control. So Naftali Bennett calling out the Netanyahu government for not doing enough. And throughout the week, Naftali Bennett has promised that he will tackle this issue of illegal building there in Area C. At that same conference, the Kohelet conference in Jerusalem, also reported by the Jpost, the U.S. rejects, it's reported here, the U.S. rejects a 1978 memo determining that Israeli so-called settlements in Yudav Shomron violate international law. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in a video statement to the Kohelet Policy Forum's conference. Pompeo said the U.S. is disavowing the deeply flawed Carter-era memorandum written by then State Department legal advisor Herbert Hansel, which called all Israeli settlements beyond the 1949 armistice lines illegal. His comments go a step further than his statement in November that the U.S. concluded that the establishment of Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria are per se not against international law. So he took it in this video statement, took it a step further, saying that this Carter-era policy was not policy anymore, was not in accordance with international law. And Pompeo again and the Trump administration showing once again, up until now, that they are supporters of Israel's rights to Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, the Golan, onward and onward. On the defense front here, Israel unveils a breakthrough laser to shoot down missiles. There have been tests this week to upgrade the Iron Dome system, and at the same time, the Defense Ministry has made a technological breakthrough, reported by our friend Anna Ehrenheim, of lasers that can intercept aerial threats, including rockets and anti-tank guided missiles. This was announced this past week. Another amazing technology, which Israel will be, I'm sure, implementing in the near future. Again, and sorry to be a little bit negative here. I mean, these technologies are amazing, and Iron Dome, a game changer, and I'm sure this laser will also take it to the next level. But this is a policy of reaction, of defense, of putting Band-Aids on things. Until you actually deal with the problem, you can keep building lasers and Iron Domes and all these defensive shields, which I'm not going to say aren't necessary, but you can spend millions and millions of dollars and billions of dollars on these defense systems when you can probably, I'm not saying it's easy, but you can probably, and you should, stop putting Band-Aids on the situation and actually take care of the situation. I'm referring in this case to Hamas and the other terror groups in Gaza. Of course, we want to be protected, but at the same time, one day perhaps we will take care of business down there in Gaza. Finishing the program today with two positive and amazing stories. Number one, the Kinneret, the Lake of Galilee, is up 1 meter since the start of the winter. Tremendous amount of rain we've had over the past week. It's been a wonderful rainy season, and from what I understand, it's supposed to rain later on in the week as well. So the Kinneret, Lake of Galilee, continuing to rise. As I mentioned last week, unfortunately, there haven't been people killed as a result of the storms here, the winter storms. Let's hope everybody has a safe week when it comes to the weather here in this country, and hopefully the Kinneret will keep rising, and it'll be for a bracha, for a blessing. And finally, an amazing technology. I actually got to see this technology firsthand this past year at the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman's July 4th party, which took place in Jerusalem. This company was showcasing their product here. WaterGen is the company. They have a product called Jenny, a new water from air appliance. They actually create water from the air, and you can drink it. I drank it. It's unbelievable. Anyway, this product has been named the Energy Efficiency Product of the Year in 2020 from the Smart Home Mark of Excellence Awards at the Consumer Electronics Show. That's a mouthful, in Las Vegas. Bottom line, this Israeli water company, which produces water from out of thin air, it's like magic, took home this big award at the Vegas Consumer Electronics Show this past week, showing you once again how Israel is truly the startup nation, creating so much positive in the world and giving back to the world, contributing on so many fronts, whether it's technology or medical breakthroughs or cyber, whatever it is. Israel, once again, giving back to the world, and here being recognized as Israeli company WaterGen for their amazing, amazing technology and creating water out of thin air. It's unbelievable stuff. Anyway, that's going to do it for today. Shout out to Benjamin Bresky, engineer extraordinaire, Tabitha Epstein for everything she does here at the Land of Israel Network, behind the scenes and getting these shows up. My name is Josh Hasten for January the 13th, 2020, 16th of Tevet, 5780. Don't forget, get in touch with me during the week, josh@thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, Joshua Hasten, or Josh Hasten Israel Advocacy and Journalism. On Twitter at Josh Hasten, and on Instagram as well. Most importantly, between now and when we speak again next Monday, please God, everyone in the wonderful world of ours, be safe. Shalom, shalom, from a beautiful day here as the sun is starting to come out here in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish people. Shalom, shalom.
This is Eve Harrow for the Land of Israel Network. You can start every week with me, hearing views and interviews with fascinating people, some well-known, others homegrown, about places I guide, ideas I have to get you thinking too. It's about the land. It's about my people. It's about our collective journey. Rejuvenation with Eve Harrow, Sundays on the Land of Israel Network.